Where's Johnny? You're gonna need a bigger boat. So serious.
I am Iron Man.
This is a tasty burger.
Welcome to the In Session Film Podcast.
Hello and welcome to Chasing the Gold. I am In Session Film Awards editor Shadan Larkey. I have Cameron Ritter joining me today, and we are doing our final Oscar predictions episode. Cameron, thank you so much for agreeing to come on this with me.
Yeah, glad to be here. I've missed some opportunities elsewhere to commit my thoughts to verbally anywhere, so I'm taking advantage of this today. It's going to be great.
Well, I am so happy to have you because as we were talking about briefly before we started recording this, and I've been, covering the Oscar race for several years now. I've been an Oscar watcher for a long time. I don't remember a race that feels as wobbly and in flux as this one. My confidence is really lacking here. Like, there are some years, particularly last year, where I felt like very cocky about my predictions, and I really felt like I knew what I was talking about and very committed to my picks. And this year, I don't feel that way at all. I'm a little nervous.
No, yeah, me and my wife are having our first annual Oscars party, and I'm the movie guy in my friend group, and so now I'm worried that I'm going to get exposed because I'm not gonna, all my picks aren't gonna hit. So I don't even know what's going to be nominated, let alone what's going to win anything. So we'll see what happens.
And we should mention Oscar. So we are recording this Monday, January 20th. Oscar predictions are coming out the 23rd. And obviously, as we mentioned in our last episode, everything that happened in Los Angeles is awful. It's hard to sit here and talk about stuff like this when I feel like people are struggling with real life issues, and I don't want to make light of that in any way, but it's hard not to think that, these dates being pushed back and just people not having time to watch things is going to affect what we end up seeing in the nominations on the 23rd. No,
yeah, there's been stuff coming out about people not finishing The Brutalist, and so like that, if they're not finishing what in my opinion should be like a top 3 best picture race movie, if they're not finishing that, like what else are they not going to be able to get to by no fault of their own at this point? But it's hard to know. I feel like I was more confident 2 weeks ago before stuff got moved, and now that it's been moved, I'm like, it just throws everything that I thought out the window because people have had more time to think, and some tides are shifting, but it's hard to read the tea leaves.
I completely agree with you, and that's something that I mentioned to you before we started recording. I said, well, I need time to finalize things, and I went through and I was like, but the things that I wasn't sure about a week ago, I'm even more confused about now. So I think this extra time just made everything a little bit even more hazy. And what I think is interesting, we saw with SAG sort of the alphabet bias, a lot of the. So I wonder, is that going to come into play here necessarily, or people going to sort of default to maybe films that came out earlier in the year? Are they going to maybe more so this year than other years just vote for the people that they know, people that they've worked with, people that they're familiar with? Are we going to see that come into play? I'm so curious. I feel like we're just going to get so many surprises when they start calling out the nominations. So I wanted to start with our shorts, the 3 shorts categories. So let's start with Best Documentary Short. I have Once Upon a Time in Ukraine, Michaela's Voice, A Letter to the World, I Am Ready, Warden, A Swim Lesson, and Death by Numbers as my 5.
I've got... Let's see. I think all of mine are the same, except I've got Incident instead of A Swim Lesson. I think that's the only difference I've got there.
Yeah, I have Incident at number 6, and I'm very tempted to switch. But there's just something about A Swim Lesson that, from the beginning, has stuck in my head, and I don't know if that's going to take me down at some point. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. Incident, I think, could be a major contender here. I should mention Chasing Rue, Planet Walker, The Only Girl in the Orchestra could possibly mix things up here. Um, what do you think? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I've got all of those in my top 10 contenders. It's just so hard. Like the shorts are the last things that I feel like we get to hear about and know like what's even in contention. So it's just hard to know what is like. I think Once Upon a Time in Ukraine is very timely still, and so that seems like something that will definitely be nominated. But yeah, it's just hard to tell with all of these shorts. I'm going to be honest. I haven't done a great job following that this year. But yeah, all the ones that you've mentioned are in my top 10. I've also got I don't know if you mentioned this one, Until He's Back. I've got that at my
Oh,
8 spot. But yeah, Chasing
that's
Rue
smart.
and A Swim Lesson are 6 and 7. But the outside of the top couple that you mentioned, I think they all could be interchangeable just based on what hits for the Academy and what they got to.
Yeah. And that's the other thing that's interesting about this too, because a lot of times with the short categories, like the nomination is kind of the win because that's when people will start watching them is after the nominations come out because in the theaters we'll do like the short programs and things like that. So I feel like for a lot of these, it's just getting the nomination and then trying to find a way to eke out the win in the end. Okay, so for best animated short film, I have A Bear Named Wojtek, Beautiful Men, Yuck, Wander to Wander, A Crab in the Pool. Those are my 5. And then I'm so tempted to switch out A Crab in the Pool for Origami, like so tempted. And then just as the other contenders, I have In the Shadow of the Cypress, Au Reservoir, Mon Monde, Me, and the 21. But like those 4, A Bear Named Wojtek, Beautiful Men, Yuck, and Wander to Wander, I feel good about. It's just that 5th spot where I'm like,
Yeah, I've also got maybe elephants in my top 10. But yeah, the top 4 I feel like are very solid and the same. But yeah, a crab in the pool or me or in the shadow of the cypress could any of those could take that 5th spot.
and I would say similarly for best live action short film, I think there's maybe 4 that I feel good about, and then that 5th spot is also I'm a little bit shaky on. So I have The Man Who Could Not Remain Silent, An Orange from Jaffa, Anuja, The Masterpiece, and Dovecote. But The Compatriot, I feel like I might switch. And then I also have I'm Not a Robot, The Last Ranger, Edge of Space, and Crust, rounding out my 10.
Yeah, I think the Compatriots got a good shot, but yeah, it's those top 4 that you mentioned. Also, I've got. I feel like a lot of times the shorts have 3 or 4 pretty solid ones, but then the last couple spots, it's hard to say. But yeah, the Compatriot could take out Dovecote at any point. I mean, just depends on when people got to it.
Yeah, and I feel like with the shorts too, a lot of times, the names are really like if there's something like Yuck, for example, where it stands out to you that's really beneficial for the short films. So I wonder how much that's going to come into play as well. Like if you haven't had time to watch them all, if something just seems interesting and you're going to check it out, check it off and move on. Um,
Yeah, I mean the catchy titles that helps with the shorts because people there. I feel like there's probably. I mean, there's so many features as well out there, but a lot of people don't make the time to watch as many shorts. So they gotta the ones that seem more interesting. They're gonna even if they're not that good. If it's got a title like Yuck, that's gonna draw me to it for sure.
Exactly, exactly. And Cameron, I forgot to mention one of the most important things up front, which is that you cover best sound and best director for Chasing the Gold. I mean, you obviously have film reviews and a lot of other great content that you do for us, but for Chasing the Gold in particular, you cover best director and best sound. So I'll let you read your sound nominations predictions first, because I feel like you're probably more confident in those than I am.
Somewhat. I mean, I think I switched before we got on today. I switched what I had put in my like final predictions article that we put out last week. But yeah, so for sound, I've got Dune Part 2, Wicked, Amelia Perez, A Complete Unknown, and I switched out Alien Romulus for Gladiator 2. I think that those two are kind of competing for that last spot in my mind, at least.
Yeah, I have Deadpool and Wolverine in my fifth spot. So I have fifth spot. So I have the four that I have Wicked, June Part 2, Amelia Perez, A Complete Unknown, and then I have Deadpool and Wolverine, but I don't feel good about that. I mean, I had Blitz in for a long time, but that movie just seems gone. And then
Yeah,
I
you
feel
and I are
like
the only ones that watched it, I think.
yeah,
And we talked about it
probably.
that one time. So
Probably. But yeah, I mean it, and I wonder if like cuz I know Gladiator 2, was also a major contender for a lot of things earlier in the season, but that seems to have faded a lot. And then Alien Romulus, did very well with the tech, the Oscar shortlist and stuff. So that makes me think that I mean, I don't know. You're probably right. I'm gonna switch to Alien Romulus too. That's my official. I'm gonna put Alien Romulus. We're gonna both go down, go down the ship together.
yeah, I've still got Civil War at number 8. I'm still holding out hope because of despite how divisive that movie was when it came out. I think the sound design is amazing in there, but I don't think it has a realistic chance. But I just wanted to mention that one. If I had my way, that would sneak its way in there for one of the, I won't say which, but one of the musical options that we have.
I wonder who you're talking about. I also have as a potential option Joker Folie à Deux and The Wild Robot. I don't think either of those are going to happen. I do think The Wild Robot would be a really cool sound nomination,
That would be
but
awesome.
I don't have faith. Speaking of another category where I have like 4 that I feel really good about, and then a shaky fifth spot is best makeup and hairstyling.
Yeah, let's hear
So
it.
I have The Substance, Wicked, Dune Part 2, A Different Man, and I have The Apprentice in number 5. But you can talk me out of that and talk me into Nosferatu because I don't, and we're going to talk about this in this episode, but there's a couple films that are big question marks for me. So one of them is The Apprentice. I have no idea how that movie is going to do. It could show up in a lot of places or show up nowhere.
Yeah,
I don't know. Nosferatu, I'm not sure. I wonder if that came out too late. I know BAFTA did pretty darn well with BAFTA, so that makes me more confident. And I do think like if there's one nomination that Nosferatu should get, it's makeup and hairstyling. But I don't know. And then I wonder like Dune Part 2 obviously won the Oscar for the first one, but I wonder like did that come out too long ago? I've seen a lot of people take that out of their predictions, but I just feel like particularly with makeup and hairstyling, they like the most. And
totally.
Dune Part 2 is just so it's so much. It's so much.
No, yeah, I don't have Dune Part 2 in my 5 here for make.
Oh.
I've got The Substance, Wicked, A Different Man, Nosferatu, and I'm praying Beetlejuice. Let's go.
I mean, I think I have that in sort of my other contenders because I also have I want to mention Waltzing with Brando because
Yeah, I haven't seen that one, but I've got it in my it's in my list because I have seen it pop up a lot in some other people's like not exactly it's gonna get nominated. It's like on the outside looking in. Have you seen that movie?
I haven't seen it. I can't even like I reached out to be like, can I watch this movie? And so I have not seen it,
Exactly.
but they love biopics and sometimes just making the shortlist and having your name on the shortlist is enough.
Totally.
But something we should also mention is because of the wildfires in LA, they canceled the in-person bake-off. So a lot of times smaller films will benefit from having the opportunity to in-person show off their work, but it was all virtual this year. They just had an interview with the teams that they posted online. So I wonder like does that I mean I still think The Substance is is pretty safe. But something like The Apprentice could have really benefited from that. Something
Totally.
like A Different Man could have really benefited from, having the opportunity to show off their work in person. So this category is another one where I feel like we could see a lot of surprises. Like maybe if Amelia Perez, as many are predicting, is the nomination leader, this will just be a coattail nomination to add to their tally.
Yeah, when I've got it at my 6, I definitely could see it sneaking in. I've got that at 6, and then The Apprentice at 7, and then I've got Dune at 8. I just think that as much, I mean, Dune Part 2 is my favorite or my number one movie of 2024, but I just think that the support for it has waned even more than I expected. I knew that it would struggle having come out so early, but I just didn't think I thought that there was a ton of enthusiasm for the first one, and it was knocking out all these technical awards and these below the line categories, but there just doesn't seem to be that kind of support this
Yeah,
year, this time
I
around, and I don't know
agree.
what it is.
And we mentioned, and I think this might be an issue for Wicked as well, but I think knowing that there's another Dune coming and knowing that there's another Wicked coming is going to hurt them potentially. With Wicked, I don't think it's going to mess with the nominations. We'll get into that. But with Dune Part 2, I just feel like they know they have another opportunity, so they feel like they can wait. I don't know. But again, I think potentially because there's been so many date shifts, we could see films that came out earlier in the year really benefit from that. And a lot of people might be like, well, I've seen Dune. And
Totally. Yeah, I think that's a good point. Might have to sneak it back into some things with that in mind. But yeah, right now I've got it out. But that's one where those top my thinking, The Substance, Wicked, and I think Nosferatu are pretty. I think it's pretty solid.
yeah, I think especially seeing how another on-air predictions change for me. I think seeing how well again Nosferatu did at BAFTA, but does it kick out A Different Man or does it kick out? Oh man. Yeah, but I'm gonna sneak Nosferatu in there. I should mention my Oscar predictions are on the In Session Film website, and you can check in there to see the full list, which I will try my best not to change after we get off this pod, but we shall see. You're already talking me out of some things that I felt really confident about, so no promises. Speaking of a category where I do think we're gonna see Beetlejuice. Best costume design. So the 5 that I have are Wicked, Dune Part 2, Nosferatu, Gladiator 2, and Beetlejuice.
I've got Dune, Nosferatu, Wicked. I have Conclave and Gladiator 2, and then my next 2 out are Maria and Beetlejuice. But I could be talked into either of those.
I think something that may surprise here is The Substance. If The Substance does really well, I think the costumes and that, like, the iconic yellow coat, just all the different colors, I think that could do really well.
I would love that.
Maria could surprise here. And a film that we have not talked about yet really is A Complete Unknown, which I think is surging right at the right time.
It really is,
So,
yeah.
man, that
It could
film
sneak
has
its
given
way.
me.
I mean, it's not. I don't come away from that movie thinking much about the costumes, but also the Academy loves just like that era of like.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't even have to be like the most elaborate, as long as it's somewhat accurate to what. Several of the members. I know it's gotten younger, but several members of the Academy were in their prime during this era of Bob Dylan, so they would remember the clothing.
And you know what, though? It's interesting you mentioned that because older members of the Academy tend to vote earlier. So maybe their votes were not as affected by the wildfires. Like they got their votes in. So we could see a lot of that could be a factor that we're
Totally.
maybe should consider as well. Yeah, because we keep talking about the younger members, but I think the older members could see a lot of influence. And then also we should mention the international members of the Academy could be a large presence here. There's a couple of categories where I think that could come into play. I did want to say the reason why I feel so confident in Beetlejuice, which could end up biting me here, is that Colleen Atwood is the costume designer, and they love her, and I just feel like her name recognition and presence is enough to get her a nomination here. But
yeah, totally, especially with the circumstances that we've talked about. Like, I think that if people who know costume designers, they're going to know her name, and like that just totally makes sense.
Okay, so next up for best production design, why don't you read me your nominations first?
I've got Dune Part 2, Nosferatu, Gladiator 2. A lot of twos in there. Different. All of them on my sheet are spelled differently there. That's funny. And then Wicked and The Brutalist. And then I've got Emilia Perez and The Substance and Conclave as like 6, 7, 8.
Yeah, so I have Wicked, The Brutalist, Dune Part 2, Gladiator 2, and I have Conclave instead of Nosferatu, just because I feel like they've done a really good job of getting out there and telling people that they did so much, like building, like building the Sistine Chapel,
totally, yeah.
and building different things for Conclave. Like that's been a big part of their campaign, and I feel like that's going to come across. And the Gladiator 2, like Colosseum, is so iconic that I feel like that alone, kind of recreating the Gladiator look for the sequel all these years later, is going to be enough to get that nomination. But Nosferatu, I think, could really, again, see, the problem is I have Nosferatu in so many like number 6s, and I'm just rethinking that now because I'm like, but maybe I don't know if people had enough time to see it or not. That's why I'm just not sure.
That's very true. And I think as we're speaking, I just took out The Brutalist and put in Conclave. So I definitely think, I mean, they rebuilt the Sistine Chapel. That's amazing. Good for them. I was literally watching the movie with somebody, and they're like, "How did they get access to the Sistine Chapel?" I was like, "They built it," and they're like, "What?" Not that I don't know if they've ever been there, but.
And speaking of The Substance, I have that at number 7.
Same.
But I feel like that would be such a cool nomination. Not brave enough to predict it, but I wouldn't be surprised with The Brutalist. And there's been some. Have you caught up, Cameron? Let's take a pause to catch up on The Brutalist AI controversy has come out.
I have. Yeah. It's been similar to the whole TikTok ban. It's been like a 3-day process. I feel like late on Saturday, I got sent a couple of things about it, and then even today, I mean, Brady Corbet. I think it was just today. He announced, or he like released a statement saying that it wasn't like people are trying to make the distinction between generative AI and just like normal quote unquote AI that like people use all the time. And so I think it seems like it's more the if you think generative AI is bad, it's more the good kind that like a lot of people use, and it's more just like post-production work that was done to help with when Adrian Brody and Felicity Jones were speaking Hungarian. I think it was it's not when they were speaking English. That's what he said. But I think it's more like normal post-production work than actual like generative AI that is kind of what the kind that like steals work from people via it's how it works. Is that anything of what you've heard, or where you're at?
The reason that I bring it up is because, sorry about that, my cough was like getting to me. The reason why I bring it up is because one of the areas where it was used was also for a little bit of like the building sequences.
Oh yeah.
So does that hurt it in the production design conversation? It's not going to matter with nominations, but I wonder if later on.
Yeah, totally. I thought that I may not have read all of the things, but I thought it had been used for like at the end. Spoiler alert for The Brutalist, I guess. But at towards the end in the epilogue, when they are like panning through the different works that he completed, like I thought someone said that they like used AI to generate like the outline of the building, and then real artists like touched it up and like
Right.
finished it. But are
Yeah.
you saying that they used it for like shots of the actual like
No,
community center?
you are definitely correct. But I just mean
Okay.
like I wonder if people don't take the time to read about it, if
No,
there
totally.
are misconceptions that are going to come into play. The reason why I was originally so confident in the Brutalist getting in here is because it's about an architect, and I don't know how it doesn't get production sign. But to your point, Cameron, if people have not even watched the film, is that, I don't know.
Yeah, and well, if they haven't finished it, then they haven't seen the final creation of all that
Right,
he's
right. Exactly.
architecting.
Exactly.
So yeah, I mean that's a good point, but yeah, I just don't know. I don't know what to make of the Brutalist at this point now on several fronts because of regardless of where you fall on or your opinion on the whole AI thing with it. Some people are not going to do their due diligence to like read all of the things about it, and so people have already made an opinion about it. And I think it'll affect things more for wins than nominations because all of that stuff
Right.
came out the day after or maybe the night when nominations closed. So I think it'll still our thoughts in general removed from the AI stuff. I think will still hold true, but for picking wins later on, I think that will
Yeah.
be that'll make it another factor to include in there.
Well, here's something we also have not touched on that I think is going to be important, though, is that the only televised ceremony that we got to see during voting was the Golden Globes.
True.
So is that going to be an influence? Because if it is, then something like The Brutalist, even if they haven't seen it, if you're like, oh, well, I saw Adrian Brody come up there and give a great speech, let me vote for this movie.
Yeah, same with Brady. He had a great speech as well.
He
I
had a
mean,
great
yeah,
speech
I
as
mean,
well.
it and Amelia Perez both had like amazing, about as good as you can get nights.
Right.
At
So
the
I
Golden
wonder,
Globes.
is that going to come into play for a lot of these nominations of like,
I would say so.
and speaking of Amelia Perez, I don't have actually Amelia Perez in my 10 list, but that could also be another area where they just check it off. In addition to costume design, by the way.
No, yeah, it's one. I have Amelia Perez in my 10 of just about every category, just because I'm like,
Right.
despite the discourse, the people who actually vote on these things seem to love it, and so it's just like, why not give it this and that? Like, why not just bring it along for everything?
And listen, we saw this with Everything Everywhere All at Once. Like, it got a song nomination that nobody was predicting because they just really love that movie. I love
Yeah.
the costumes in Everything Everywhere All at Once, but that was a nomination that people were not predicting. But, you know, once that film it became very clear post Oscar nominations morning, like, oh, that's our Best Picture winner because it just was able to pick up all these things. So I think we might see that with Amelia Perez, where even a lot of these below the line categories where it doesn't feel like a lock, we could see a surprise. Maybe not all of them, but maybe it picks up a few additional nominations that we're not as confident about. And listen, in terms of the discourse, I think this is just one of those things where we need to realize that like online and the real world are two completely different things, and a lot of the things that
What
are
do you mean?
happening listen, I think the discourse is valid. I think the criticisms are valid. We've talked about it at length on this podcast,
Mhm.
but I don't think the industry cares.
They clearly don't.
And listen, again, maybe by the time we're talking about winners, maybe we'll see that come into play, you know, in a month from now, whatever. But right now, when they're making these lists, and Amelia Perez did incredibly well with BAFTA as well, with the BAFTA nominations. So yeah, I don't think, if there was the time for this backlash to catch up to Amelia Perez, it ain't now, let me tell you.
Yeah, it's the ship has sailed on stopping its momentum. That's for sure.
Speaking of Amelia Perez, one of the categories where I think the Oscar is already being engraved is Best Original Song. So let me
Yes.
ask you
But
this,
which one?
Cameron.
Yeah.
Do you have, well, in terms of your nominations predictions, do you have one song getting in or two?
I've definitely got two. Those are like the two that I'm most confident about getting in general. El Mal and Mi Camino. Are those the two that you have in there?
Well,
Or do you have two?
I had both getting in for a really long time, and then I put in Mi Camino, but I took it out. But now I think I'm gonna put it back in again because BAFTA just went crazy for that film. Now my question is, what do I take out to make room for Mi Camino again? Because I have El Mal. I think Kiss the Sky is very safe from the Wild Robot.
Same.
I think Never Too Late feels pretty good to me because it's Elton John and Brandy Carlisle. Elton John with a perfect 2 for 2 Oscars record so far, and Brandy Carlisle very beloved, so I feel good about that. Then we have 2 slots that I think are questionable, which I have Sick in the Head from Kneecap getting in. I don't feel great about it, but Kneecap, I mean, beloved by BAFTA, and I think the British contingent could make get the love for get Kneecap to get across the finish line. And then we always have the Diane Warren of it all with the song from 6888, The
Yeah,
Journey.
I've got the Journey in there. And I
Yeah,
think, Diane Warren gets up once a year and walks out there and gets in the studio and she gets her Oscar nomination, and that it's a tale as old as time, and I don't think it's stopping this year.
yeah. And listen, like I know I have a lot of friends in LA, and they'll tell me like, you go to an FYC event for like just any other thing and she'll be there. And she's just, talking to people and people know her,
She does
and
the work.
she does the work, she does the legwork every year. That's why people wonder, oh, how does she pick up these nominations every year? That's why, because she's out there shaking hands and kissing babies. And so I guess I just have to take that Kneecap song out that I've been so confident in for so long and put back in Mi Camino. A couple of other things that we could potentially see sneak in here. One is Compress Repress from Challengers, and one is Harper and Will Go West, just because there's like the Kristen Wiig of it all.
Yeah.
And they've really been pushing that song along with the documentary. So but yeah, so I think, long story short, my final 5 for best original song: El Mal, Kiss the Sky, Never Too Late, The Journey, and Mi Camino.
Yeah, I think Challengers is not one that we've touched on just yet, but that's another one of those that could kind of get blanked. It might get one nomination, or it could get 2 or 3 or 4, depending on. It's another one that I have no idea how they feel about it, and it also came out early, so it's like I don't know what to that, and like we've talked about, that could help it now, or it could hurt it because people, even though they saw it, they've already forgotten about it. So we'll see. But like,
Yeah,
I think
I have challengers in several categories, and I think that might be a mistake. But speaking of our next category, best original score, it won the Golden Globe, which was a shock to me. I did not think that was going to happen. I thought it was either going to be The Brutalist or Conclave, and then you have Reznor and Ross sneaking in there. And then Challengers also did very well with the BAFTA nominations, picking up several nominations that people weren't necessarily predicting. So I feel like there's support behind that film.
Yeah, I hope so. I love Challengers. I hope that it picks up more than I'm expecting. I hope that I tend to be more of a pessimistic guy, so I set myself up to be sad, and then it'll be fine when I am, but I don't want to predict too much and then be mad when I'm wrong. So that's probably my personal biases are probably keeping me from putting Challengers in more things. Like I don't even have it. I don't think I have it in. Oh no, I do have it in my score. My score. 5.
Okay, yeah. Well, I'm so curious about, because for best original score, I have The Brutalist, Emilia Perez, Conclave, Challengers, and The Wild Robot. Because I think love for Chris Bowers is gonna get him across the finish line. But in 6th position, foolishly or wisely, we shall see on the 23rd, I have Wicked. But
the Wicked score has been creeping up. and there's a lot of people like, yeah, it's good, but like how is how can that count when Dune Part 2 isn't eligible, and like I guess the score is just expanded from the musical since it's such a damn long movie, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I really think Wicked could get in as well. I don't know what to take out because I have the same five as you. I've got the Brutalist, Conclave, Challengers, the Wild Robot, and Emilia Perez. That's what you said you had, right? So in some
Mhm.
order. Yeah, and I've got Nosferatu at 6, but
Yeah.
I don't. That's another one where it's like Nosferatu. Same with how I feel about Challengers. I really like Nosferatu. I don't know how much. Like it got support at the BAFTAs. We'll see how much that matters. It's
Well, I
just so hard to
also,
tell.
yeah, and I wonder, like, again, the Wild Robot, maybe does that miss? Because I have that in my five, like, or is that film pretty strong and locked in? Like, I
Yeah,
think maybe the Brutalist, if there's gonna be a shock, maybe the Brutalist misses. I don't know. I just
I
feel
would
like
personally if the Brutalist missed score, but that's okay.
uh, and then because I wonder, like, if we're gonna see a surprise, what about something like Hans Zimmer for Blitz? Again, I think that movie is pretty dead, but like if there's a name check, that wouldn't really surprise me.
Totally. I
Um,
think you're dead on about that.
yeah.
What about the Room Next Door score? Is that film more or less dead than Blitz?
I have that's another film. Like if you were to go back in time and look at my predictions from earlier this season, like I had The Room Next Door everywhere, and it's just like continuously slipped down the rankings. I have it at number 7 right now. I don't think, but that's a film that I think a lot of categories like screenplay could potentially surprise there. I don't see any, Tilda Swinton or Julianne Moore getting in at this point, but like
Yeah.
who knows? But yeah, I think the score, again, it's my number 7. I don't know.
I've got it at 8. I don't know what to make, but I still, even though there could be a surprise, I feel good about the 5 that we both have. It's
I
it's
do
it's one
too.
of those where it would be a genuine shock if more than one of those missed.
I
And
do
even
too.
yeah.
Well, tell me about, because here's the cat. And now that you mentioned, I do feel good about best original score. Let's do kind of actually, you bring up a good point. Let's do a check-in of the categories that we've talked about thus far. Like, what are the ones that you feel kind of the most shaky about? Like, I feel good about score. I feel good about best original song. I feel good about, um, I think sound I feel pretty good about. But like for me, best hair and makeup is the one where I'm the most like I'm not sure. I'm not confident.
No, yeah, that's probably the one I'm most shaky on too, just because I think that there are so many like legitimate cases to be made, and it even like I have Dune at my number 8, and I was like, I wouldn't be surprised if that came out. I
Mhm.
wouldn't be surprised if it. I would be surprised if it won against the Substance, but like I wouldn't be the most shocked in the world if it made it in. It's just it's hard to know where the Academy voters' heads are at with so much of this is being changed by like circumstance instead of actual like data, and so that stresses me out, so it's hard to tell. So but like this is the one where I think I have my like top 8 I feel good about. They could find a way in.
Yeah, you make a case. Yeah. Well, speaking of Dune Part 2, the one category that I am predicting it to win at this point is best visual effects. But the rest of this category, so I have Dune Part 2 that I feel good about. I have Wicked that I feel good about, and I have Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. Those 3 feel pretty darn good to me. I think Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes has been nominated. Every one of the 3 from the original trilogy got nominated, so I
Hmm.
feel good about that getting in here. I feel good about Wicked getting in here. Number 4, I have Alien Romulus. I just think that that is a film that this branch will respond to the visual effects there. And then I have Gladiator 2, but man, oh man, I really don't know because I have Deadpool and Wolverine that could do well here just because people have seen it.
Totally.
A Better Man, people have not seen. It's talking at 2 ends of the spectrum.
But the ones that have are like obsessed with it.
but the ones that are obsessed with it. There's a lot of passion behind that film, and the VFX people really like. That's like one of the things that people point out the most is how good it looks.
Well, if we get, let's say we have the 5 of Dune Part 2, Wicked, Gladiator 2, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, and Better Man, which is what my 5 is. 4 of the 5 of those involve monkeys.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that
This
crazy?
is the year of monkeys. Well, speaking of, what about Mufasa? Do you think that well, that's not monkeys, that's lions. But speaking of animal,
there's probably a monkey in there. I haven't seen it.
Yeah,
So
I did not get a chance to see that. But do you think that could maybe be the surprise?
Maybe. I honestly don't know a soul that's seen it. It's making all this money, and I'm like, who's obviously families are going to see it, but like, I don't know anyone. I don't know any reputable people in my life that can speak to it. So I have no clue what to make of that one.
And then Civil War surprisingly made the shortlist here. Underperformed with shortlists, but made the shortlist. And then we should mention perhaps a sort of blockbuster that we may be underestimating in several categories is Twisters.
I had just switched Twisters and Better Man earlier today, and I would love to see Twisters here. I wish that that one of the songs from Twisters would make it in, but I think it has no chance. So
yeah,
I didn't even bring it up. But no, I would love to see Twisters here. I mean, I'm fine if we skip one of the movies involving monkeys to get a Twister in there. But yeah, we'll see. I just think Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. I think people love the work in all those movies. I think that's a lock. Like you said, I'm predicting Dune Part 2 to win at this point as well. I feel good about Wicked. Gladiator 2, questionable on all fronts, honestly. But I think Better Man is surging, so I think it will come down to Gladiator 2, Twisters, and Romulus. I think will be and I've got Nosferatu at 8 somewhere in there. So it's also it's another one of those where like I feel good about 3 or 4, but then the last spot or 2, it could go either way.
I mean, Gladiator 2 is another one of those films where I feel like could show up, like get costumes, production design, like visual effects, could potentially get Denzel Washington. We'll talk about it, but like, or Zero. And I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know where
that feels like an
land.
all or nothing movie.
All or
if
nothing,
there is one
absolutely.
at this awards. But yeah, right now I've got it in, but that's mainly because I don't know. It's hard for me to put Twisters in as like a lone. It's like the only place that I have Twisters even on my list for anything. So it's just hard for me to think that they'll care. But
well, speaking of another category that has been one of the most all over the place for me is cinematography.
Yeah.
So I'll let you go first because I have a lot to say about this category, surprisingly.
Yeah, I have been racking my brain for weeks about this. I've got The Brutalist, I've got Conclave, I've got Nosferatu, I've got Dune, and I've got. This is maybe more of a prayer at this point because I think that Nickel Boys is dead, but I've got Nickel Boys. I'm hoping that I'm so wrong on that, but I don't think I am, sadly.
I have had Nickel Boys in here for so long, and before we came on, I was like, do I just take it out? And I couldn't bring myself to take it out. So I was like, let me talk to Cameron first and see what he says. But I'm so confused. And I don't know. Did you mention Wicked in your 5?
No, Wicked is one that I think it's in contention for a lot more things than I think it is. And so I need to be considering
with Wicked because I was like, there's no way it's going to get into cinematography. And then it got the ASC nomination over the likes of Nickel Boys.
Yeah. Well, even the most like Wicked pilled people in the world are like, how did that happen? So I don't know if that we'll see. I mean, we'll see if that translates to an Oscar nom, but I don't even have it in my 10, but I probably should at this point.
And then like I had Ed Lackman in my 5 for Maria for so long, but that film is also a film that seems dead. And then
It
I feel
does.
like Anora could potentially be a surprise here. Like if that movie overperforms, Anora could get in. And then on the cusp, another film that I had for so long was The Girl with the Needle, because it's black and white.
Mm.
Um, that's a cinematographer they really like. So for like a long time, I had The Girl with the Needle in there, and I was like, you cannot make me take out this movie. But so my 5 that I do have, I have The Brutalist, Conclave, Nosferatu. Those 3 I feel pretty good about. But
Same.
then I have Nickel Boys and Amelia Perez. But I like Greg Fraser, talk about a cinematographer. Do you think Dune Part 2? I don't know. I really don't know. I was hoping you'd help me out.
I know. Well, I've got it in mainly as a protest against Amelia Perez, but like we've talked about, Amelia Perez, that could be another one that they just like. It just gets almost everything that it's in the top 8 for. I think. Yeah, I don't know. I've got Blitz in there, but I need to take that out. It doesn't need to be in my
Yeah,
10 at all.
I mean, I really think honestly that Wicked is gonna end up. I think I'm gonna put Wicked in my number 5, not because think I just think like it's gonna be a check for that film. I think that movie is gonna do really well because people have seen it, and I feel like especially over the holidays, like if you have your stack of screeners, like what are you more likely to watch with your family, like Wicked or something like Nickel Boys even, or The Girl with the Needle?
Yeah, vastly different vibes between
You know
Wicked
what
and those two.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. So I just feel like people have seen Wicked, they know it. They're just gonna check it off. And can I have a moment to rant about Nickel Boys here? Because
please.
I'm so disappointed. And you know what disappoints me the most, Cameron, I must say, is that now not only do we have one underseen and underappreciated uh Colson Whitehead adaptation in The Underground Railroad, which was phenomenal a couple years ago, directed by the great Barry Jenkins, completely underappreciated. Now we have to have 2 criminally underrated Colson Whitehead adaptations. I don't understand.
What do people have against that guy?
I
Like,
don't
what's
understand.
going on?
And it may be just an Amazon thing because maybe they just I don't know, but it's
I think
like
it is. I was very confused, or I thought that they moved the release from October to December, and I was like, oh, they think it's like going to be really strong, and then they didn't do anything with it, and it just came to Raleigh this past weekend, and I've been trying to do the Lord's work out here and get my friends to go see it, despite its like barriers to the average movie going crowd. But yeah, there's been a lot of fumbled releases and rollouts this year, and Nickel Boys is like top of the list.
yeah, because
Maybe
Nickel
second to top of
Boys
the list probably, but
is the other one on your list. Sing Sing.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's one me and my friends have been talking about for a long time about how like I somehow they randomly did a showing in Raleigh one night in July, and I happened to go, and then it hasn't been available to be in a theater here until this past week.
I mean, I think I've said time and time again, Sing Sing is my favorite movie of the year. I love that film. I'm hoping that it has a good nomination morning, and if it does, I'm gonna tell you right now, Karen, if Clarence Macklin somehow pulls through a miracle and gets nominated, know that I am like in Houston on the floor, like I like dead of joy. But like I
Yeah.
just, both films missing PGA was
Hmm.
crushing. Nickel Boys missing ASC when it's such a groundbreaking like film. I think just in terms of Nickel Boys and Sing Sing, people just haven't seen them. I don't understand how you watch Nickel Boys and not nominate it for cinematography. I don't,
And other things as well. But yeah, I
and
mean
other things, but like the
that's a top two.
cinematography and direction in particular, like is so interesting and strong. And I feel like if you're a guild and your job is cinematography, I don't get it. I'm so confused.
The only answer to me is that they just haven't seen it. Like I have enough faith in them to where if they had actually seen it, they would have gotten more support. but I just think that they didn't get to it, which is sad.
Oh man. Okay, let's move on because there's other areas where we can talk about places that Nickel Boys should be and Sing Sing should be, by the way. Next up is best editing. What do you have, Cameron?
I've got Conclave, Amelia Perez, Dune Part 2, Anora, and this will be the first time we've talked about this. I've got September 5 in there, which I don't like, but I do have it in there.
Yep. This is, again, we're talking about movies that are question marks. Tell me if I've missed anything. So we have Challengers, a movie that, speaking of editing, could go either way.
Totally.
We have The Apprentice. I have no clue. We have September 5. Truly, I have to be honest with you, the biggest head scratcher of the season for me, because the way the trajectory of that film, of like very few people having seen it at Venice, it's showing up in certain pundits' predictions. People going, "What the heck is that?" And then it gets the PGA nomination, which was very shocking to me because normally PGA actually goes towards blockbusters. So to see a tiny movie like that get in there, all of this to say, so the 5 that I have are Conclave, Dune Part 2, Anora, and Wicked, and Amelia Perez. I have Challengers at number 6 because I do actually really like the editing of that film, and I feel like if it were to have a good morning, I could see the editing come across here. And then I have September 5. And at number 7, I don't think this is going to happen, but The Brutalist.
Yeah, I've got The Brutalist at 10. I feel like people think that when a movie is really long, there's a lack of editing. So like if it had good editing, it would have been shorter. I'm like, that just means that they did more editing because it's longer. Come on.
Right. That's not what editing is, but and then to round up my 10, I have Nickel Boys and The Substance. Like, I wonder if The Substance has a really good morning, if that surprises here. I don't know. But I mean, I guess I feel pretty good about my 5 just because I don't see the September 5 thing happening, but maybe I'm just not drinking the right Kool-Aid. I don't know.
Yeah, well, September 5 is such a head scratcher for me. I mean, I went to a press screening here, and it was literally me and the rep that like set up the screening. We were just like in the tiniest theater that the Regal Briar Creek has to offer, and we were just me and him just hanging out. It was so interesting. They didn't even ask. They never followed up on my review, so I was like, I guess they don't care anymore. But no, yeah, I don't know what to make of it.
Yeah.
It seems to be, it shows up just enough for me to consider that it's still got a chance in some things, but not enough for me to be really enthusiastic about it in any way.
It has a chance. I just wonder, like, is it really more of a contender than the likes of like a Wicked or even like a Challenger? I don't see how you would pick that over these other films that seem stronger. But again, there must be some passion behind. Obviously, there's passion behind it because it's showing up places like you said. I don't know.
I don't know. I feel like Challengers might have just been too fun for a lot of these things. People are like, we can't have something that is this fun and energetic in any of our nominations. I'm kind of leaning towards like people are September 5 is like a super serious, and it also talks about, or a lot of that movie is them like doing like the live editing and like
right
production. So I think that probably speaks to a lot of like the crafts folks that they're doing the work in the movie, and the editing is at least okay. So,
and I think what September 5 has done a really good job is like getting that film in front of the right people. So yeah, the general public obviously hasn't seen it, but I think the right industry folks have, and that's going to make a difference. And also, like, we know that the Academy really likes journalism movies.
That's for sure.
So like, if nothing else, and it's also short. Speaking of like something that's working against The Brutalist, like September 5 is an easy watch.
Yeah, I was shocked at how short it was.
Yeah. And honestly, like a film that could have been longer, because I felt like there was a lot that wasn't even explored that I was like, why didn't we touch on XYZ? But I wonder, like, is that going to be, you're talking me into this movie and I don't want to be talked into this movie.
I don't want it to be here any more than you do. It's just I got to plant some flags, and here it is, I guess.
Well,
Feel no need to follow me into that battle.
Well, I don't think for best editing, but I think there's other categories. Spoiler alert, where I may have to switch to September 5. But before that, I want to talk about best documentary, because this is actually a category that I feel kind of good about. And maybe I'm being dumb. So this is basically the point of this podcast, Cameron. It's like, talk me into the things that I don't feel good about and talk me out of the things that I feel good about.
I'll see what I can do.
Yeah, so the 5 that I have Daughters, Sugarcane, No Other Land, Soundtrack to a Coup d'etat, and Black Box Diaries.
Okay. I've got 4 of those. I don't have Black Box Diaries. It's my number 6, and I do have Dahomey. Which I do that one. Speaking to what you said on the how September 5 is short, Dahomey is not super long, if I remember correctly. I didn't see it in New York, but I remember I was like, "Is this technically a feature? Is this a short?" It was like kind of on the cusp. But I think it's under an hour and a half somehow.
Yeah.
So that's one that I think that some people could get to. But
Dahomey was one that I had for a really long time. I actually had it in international feature for a long time as well. I thought it was going to pull off a double. Yeah. And I took it out of both, maybe foolishly. I actually think that The Remarkable Life of Evelyn, I have it maybe a stronger contender just because it's been on Netflix for so long.
Yeah.
And I think people have seen it. And then I have Porcelain War also in contention. And then Will and Harper, they don't like celebrity docs, this branch. Like they're very averse to sort of celebrity docs. But Will and Harper has been around for so long. Yeah. And I think Netflix has done a really good job of making sure that it's like front of mind for voters, both the doc and the song, as I mentioned. And so I wonder, like, is that enough to get over whatever bias they have towards celebrity docs? And then I also have Frida, just because of, obviously, Frida Kahlo, beloved subject. And I wonder, like, but I don't know if that's enough to talk me out of my 5. But it's interesting that you bring up Dahomey, because I had sort of written it off at this point. But
yeah, it's still, I mean, when you look at some odd stuff out there, it's still like within like the top 7. Same with like, well, it feels like Will and Harper, Porcelain War, Black Box Diaries, and Dahomey are kind of fighting for that last spot. But the other 4, No Other Land, Sugarcane, Daughters, and Soundtrack to a Coup d'etat, I think those are, I feel really, really good about those.
Yeah.
I normally feel
agree.
terrible about documentary, but I feel really good about those this year. So I'm sure that we'll get them all wrong now that we feel somewhat confident in them.
Yep. Speaking of a category that I think has shifted, well, maybe not shifted rather interestingly this season. So I think we're both in agreement that, again, this is another Oscar of Emilia Perez that's already being engraved.
Yeah, I don't even need to. I'll just skip that part of the ceremony. I don't. There's no surprises coming here. Sadly.
That'll be where you can go do your hosting duties, like, or
Exactly. Yeah, I'll top off some drinks for people during that one.
And then I think we can agree that I'm Still Here and The Seed of the Sacred Fig are also pretty locked in.
Yeah, those are my top 3 right there. And then the rest, I haven't seen The Girl with the Needle yet, so do you have it in your 5?
I don't, sadly. I took it out. I have Flow. I think Flow, winning Best Animated at Globes again, right at the right time, I think bodes well for that film getting in here. And then I have Kneecap again because BAFTA loved it, and I think this is an area where the international contingent is going to push it over. I have The Girl with the Needle in at number 6. I think that enough people have seen it. People who see it really like it. And then I have Dahomey or Dahomey. And then Vermiglio from Italy could be a major contender here. Was a Globes nominee. So that could do well. And I have Armand also. I've heard a lot of good things about. And then in my 10, I also have How to Make Millions Before Grandma Dies because I think the title is awesome.
That's
And
definitely, like we talked about with the shorts. That's definitely one that's gonna be, people are definitely gonna at least watch that one because of that.
so I feel pretty good about like 4 of the 5. Like I do feel strongly about Flow. And then I think I feel pretty darn good about Kneecap just because, like I said, unless just the love that it got at BAFTA and the fact that it was shortlisted for so many things with the Academy as well. But like, I mean, again, I think The Girl with the Needle and Dahomey are probably right there. But
Yeah.
I'm sticking with Kneecap.
Yeah, I think I am going to end up with the same. I had completely forgotten about Flow being in this category, and so I have put it at in my 5 as well. Because I think the tide, it might be changing on the animated front from The Wild Robot to Flow. I mean, especially the Globes win was a huge. I don't know if it was a huge surprise, but it was a huge like signifier that there's a lot of support behind Flow.
Mm-hmm. So another category that I feel pretty good about is Best Animated Film. I have The Wild Robot, Flow, Inside Out 2, Memoir of a Snail, and Wallace and Gromit, Vengeance Most
Yep.
Foul. I think I know like Memoir of a Snail is a smaller film, but I just think like that stop motion, the Academy really likes it. Same thing with Wallace and Gromit. Again, being on Netflix, easily accessible. I mean, I guess Moana 2 could take Memoir of a Snail or Wallace and Gromit out, but I just don't see it. I think Inside Out 2 is going to take like the industry sort of big slot, and then I feel pretty good. How are you feeling?
Yeah, I mean I haven't changed my 5 in a couple of weeks on this one, and I still feel I've got the same 5 as you. So I feel pretty good. I've still got. We'll see who I decide to win, but I think it's between The Wild Robot and Flow overall. But yeah, I mean I just don't think that, obviously all of these animated movies do pretty well at the box office, so it's hard to glean anything from that. But Moana 2 hasn't gotten particularly great reception from
Right.
people that would be involved here. I don't think Despicable Me 4 is getting in. Piece by Piece, I think, is not going to get anything either. So, yeah, this might be the one where I'm most confident in the 5 that we have here.
Okay, well then I'm going to take you to a category that I don't feel good about at all.
Amazing.
Which is Best Adapted Screenplay.
Oh,
So
man.
I think my passion for these films here is clouding my judgment. I think that's what's going on with Best Adapted Screenplay. Because I have Conclave. I'm pretty locked in on that winning, by the way, given that it did so well at the Globes, and I think Conclave is going to have a great day.
Yeah.
Have Amelia Perez getting in. I have Nickel Boys right now. Don't feel confident in that. I don't feel confident in Sing Sing, but I cannot. I do not have the heart to take that film out. And then I have A Complete Unknown and I actually do feel really good about that. Right now I have it in my number 5 slot, but I actually think it's much higher than that because we see that there's love for James Mangold getting that DGA nomination. They love him. He's a previous screenplay nominee for what was the last Wolverine movie?
Logan.
He gets in for Logan of all things. So I think the Academy really likes him. I think that movie is surging right at the right time. So I actually feel good about that. But there's so many movies that I think are like right on the cusp. So I didn't mention Wicked, but I think Wicked could easily get in here over some of the other things that I mentioned. I think Denis Villeneuve could get another screenplay, nomination here for Dune Part 2. I think Pedro Almodovar could get in for The Room Next Door. I think If I'm Still Here is a stronger contender. That could also surprise. I don't know. Am I just letting my love of Sing Sing and Nickel Boys lead me down a bad path here, or do you think those films are strong enough to get screenplay even if they're not strong enough in other categories?
No, I think I have them. So I have Conclave, A Complete Unknown, Nickel Boys, Amelia Perez, and Sing Sing. So I think we have the same
Yeah,
five
we have
there.
the same 5.
I feel the only one that I mean, Dune. It's a real bummer that I don't think he's going to get nominated for that. But again, the Dune support just continues to wane as the days go on, and I think that I feel the screenplay categories are where they recognize things that they otherwise are not going to. And
Yeah.
I think for Sing Sing and Nickel Boys, I think that this is like they might get. There's a chance they both get into picture. I'm not so sure, but I do think more of a lack of support for the other options keeps them in at least in my book. But if I'm Still Here does really well, then I could easily see it getting in as well.
Yeah, I'm just nervous about Wicked. I think that's if there's going to be a surprise, it's going to be Wicked. I just don't know. Like, of Nickel Boys and Sing Sing, which one would you say is like weakest in this category? Probably Sing Sing.
At this point, probably. I would say so. I don't. I think a few more people have seen Nickel Boys, maybe barely, but yeah, they both seem very even in my mind. Outside of, well, I don't know. Nickel Boys is probably not going to get. Spoiler alert: is probably not going to get any acting noms, and Coleman Domingo's at least the face of Sing Sing.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
I do think if Wicked or Dune sneak in there, it's one of those two that gets left out for sure.
I agree. So speaking of, and again, the other screenplay category, I feel pretty good about 4 of the 5, but I made a change right before coming in to do this with you, and now because of your love of September or your points about why September 5 is a strong contender, now I'm like, wait, maybe I made a mistake. And I'm curious about this just real quickly. One thing I wanted to bring up is I'm very sad about the season that The Seed of the Sacred Fig has had. Because for a long time, I had it in director and screenplay. And then I was like, well, screenplay is not going to happen, but they're still going to recognize Rasulov in director. And then I was like, no, it's just going to be international feature, which is a shame because I think that it would have been a great presence somewhere else, to show up in multiple places. Another film similarly that we have not brought up that could have potentially an amazing nomination day or nothing is All We Imagine as Light.
Yeah, I've got it in my 10 here, but I just don't know what to. It's another one of those that the fact that we haven't discussed it yet so far, I don't know what that does seem like another all or nothing movie with like Payal Kapadia getting director and like could even sneak into picture somehow, but
there's a chance, right? Like I think there's definitely some version of Oscar nomination morning where All We Imagine is Light gets like sneaks into number 10, sneaks into screenplay. Director I don't feel as good about, but I think if they're like, I think screenplay, if it shows up anywhere, is going to be screenplay. Like, she's been my number 6 in this category for so long because I think she's right there. I just think there are stronger films, but I can see a world where it happens because that's just that's a movie where if you've seen it, you feel strongly about it. And I think one thing that we should keep in mind is that, like, it doesn't actually take that many votes to get into, like, get that number 5 slot. You know what I mean? Especially I think I was reading somewhere where they're worried that like of the people that live in Academy members that live in LA, potentially only 30% or so is voting. So like if you have less votes being cast overall this year, that means it doesn't take that many votes to actually get in. So
That's very true.
if you are All We Imagine Is Light or a September 5 and you have those passion votes, it's not, you don't have as big of a mountain to climb as maybe you would other years.
Yeah, I think you've got a good point there. I've got it at my number 6 right now. I'll just go through my 5. I've got Anora, The Brutalist, A Real Pain, The Substance. Those are the 4, I think, that
I agree.
I feel I'd be very, 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 very shocked if one of those didn't make it in. And then I do have my not beloved September 5 at the number 5 spot. And then after, I've got All You Imagine Is Light. And then I've got Hard Truths and Challengers kind of on the outside there, making maybe could sneak in. But again, Challengers is one of those all or nothing movies as well that it could get some support, it could not.
So that's the thing. So I have the 4. I think I agree with you. Anora, The Brutalist, A Real Pain, The Substance are pretty locked. And I had Mike Lee getting in for Hard Truths for the longest time. I felt like, you know, especially in original screenplay and adapted, as you mentioned, that's where a lot of these smaller films where maybe there's not enough passion for a lot of other categories, but the screenplay categories will recognize them. And then right before we got on, I was like, no, I think it's going to be Challengers because it did get the WGA nomination. The caveat of all caveats being that a lot of films were ineligible at WGA, but it put in at WGA. Again, I mean, it did that surprise at the Globes. Like, I wonder if maybe that ticked off something in people's brain where they were like, oh, Challengers, like that's a movie that I liked from earlier this year. But is it going to be September 5? I think you've talked me into September 5.
I'm sorry about that if that's the case. But no, I do think it's more between September 5 and Challengers, but I also would not be surprised at all if the 5th spot ends up being All We Imagine Is Light. But I think that I dare say that All We Imagine Is Light would need to sneak its way into the 10 for Best Picture for it to also get this. I think that there needs to be that much support, but I don't think that those things necessarily need to happen for Challengers or September 5. So we'll see.
Well, that's the thing is, I feel like, and there have been lone screenplay nominees, like that's a thing that we see. But I think with Challengers, if I'm right that it's, if nothing else, at least going to pick up score, then it makes sense that it would also show up in screenplay. Whereas like, I just think these other films like would be screenplay or nothing, potentially. But then if you're right that like September 5 is a major contender for the likes of editing, for screenplay, for picture, maybe it just has a really good morning and gets all of those.
Yeah, and I hope it. Personally, I'd be fine if they didn't say its name at all. But we'll see. I just think, I mean, it got a nomination. Was it the PGA? Is that what it was? Over, there was someone that I remember, they were so confident in Challengers in this realm, and then September 5 got something over Challengers, and they were like, oh no, I was so wrong. So now I don't know what to make of it. But I've got it in there for now. I probably won't change it. I don't have more time to think about it between now and then. But
I'm gonna sleep on it. I'm gonna stick with Challengers for now. But I think like I said, September 5, man, maybe I'm just gonna be wrong, or maybe I end up switching and then I'm gonna be wrong anyway. I don't know.
I feel stick with Challengers. I hope you're right.
But then I feel like if I switch, then I'm gonna be like, why did you switch? And then if I don't switch, I'm gonna be like, why didn't you switch? Like either I feel like it's not gonna go my way, but I don't know which way it's gonna go.
You just can't win.
If you've stuck with us so far, thank you, because we have now come to our last 6 categories, which are acting categories, director, and picture. So Cameron, tell me, this is the craziest category of all, in my opinion. Best Supporting Actress, truly the craziest category of this year, in my opinion. Maybe of the last several years. I have not seen a category this in flux in a long time. So I'm gonna let you guide us into the abyss here.
Yeah, so I think the top two are confirmed, in my opinion, and etched in stone, and they're fighting for the award as far as I'm concerned. Ariana Grande and Zoe Saldana. I've got those as my first two, and then I was just doing some switcheroos earlier. I've got Jamie Lee Curtis for The Last Showgirl, which I don't love. I mean, she's fine, but I don't love that I'm doing that. I've got Margaret Qualley for The Substance, and that is probably a personal bias because my wife is well aware I'm in love with her as well. So that's probably a me thing. And then I've got, despite the like less than 100 words spoken, I've got Isabella Rossellini in there.
Yeah, okay, this category, like I said, has been the biggest headache because, and we should mention, Zoe Saldana and Ariana Grande are the only two that have shown up at all four major precursors. So that's why we feel confident about those. And then for a long time with the Isabella Rossellini of it all, I was like, why is she showing up places? I don't get it. I'm so confused. And then I finally was like, well, she's shown up everywhere. So then I convinced myself she was in, put her in. Then she doesn't. It was SAG that she missed, if I'm not
I think so, yeah.
mistaken. So then I was like, what do I do now? Because I felt confident about her for so long. And I felt pretty good about Felicity Jones because I felt like, okay, she's the long-suffering wife in a big epic. Her first nomination was a similar nomination. They love these roles. So she felt pretty good to me. Now I don't know about her. I felt pretty good about Margaret Qualley for so long because I was like, well, Demi's a strong contender. The film is surging. They clearly really like it, but then she misses BAFTA, which really floored me. But so I have Zoe, Ariana Grande, Isabella Rossellini, Felicity Jones, and Margaret Qualley. But then the problem is like all these other contenders. I don't know what to do with them because like Selena Gomez, Amelia Perez, as we've mentioned, is huge. She gets in at BAFTA. That was a huge nomination for her to get.
It's massive. Yeah.
Monica Barbaro, getting that SAG nomination. Maybe it is alphabet bias, but that movie is surging right at the right time. As I've said multiple times, I think she's the best part in the movie, or like at least the scenes where she and Timothée Chalamet are together are the strongest scenes in the movie. So if he's like a major contender, potentially for actor, spoiler alert, he's my current winner. So like, does she come along? And we know the Academy loves an ingenue. And then I don't know what to make of the Jamie Lee Curtis of it all. I really don't.
Well, it's a shame that they love an ingenue, but not an ingenue Ellis Taylor,
who
I would have in my top three if I was picking.
Exactly.
I'd probably have her. I love Margaret Qualley, so I probably have.
And you know who else? Who else I had in here for the longest time that I had to take out was Danielle Deadwyler.
Yeah, I've still got her in my 10, mainly because I just. I have a hard time believing Selena Gomez is actually, I don't know, but BAFTA's huge. I just don't know what to make. I'm sorry to my sister-in-law who loves Selena. I don't know what to do.
So do we, if people, and here's the thing again, we come to the Brutalist again. The big question of the Brutalist being like, if you don't even make it to the second half where Felicity has all of her big moments, then
yeah, but you might not even know that it was in the movie.
Exactly. And no, true. Like, that's such a good. Sorry, that's such a good point, actually. But like I said, the issue is because I think at this point, actually, Felicity is more in danger than Margaret Qualley, right?
I think so too. I think the substance is happening, in however that looks. I think I think the faces of that movie are pretty solid, and I think
And
they're
I
getting it.
Yeah, and I just think like if the passion is there for Demi, which I think it is, and if you're watching the movie for her performance, I don't see how Margaret doesn't come along for the ride. Again, maybe I'm wrong, but I just don't get it. But then if I take Felicity Jones out, between Monica Barbaro and Jamie Lee Curtis, I don't know who would be the strongest person to put in.
Yeah, I mean, Jamie
Um,
Lee Curtis is more just surged in the last little bit, but I mean, I remember in like November, people were talking about Monica Barbaro, and I was like, I literally don't know if I've ever heard of that person in my life. Which I
well,
looked it up and I had seen her in something, but like,
yeah,
but she really is. I don't care for A Complete Unknown personally,
I agree with you. I don't like that film,
but
but
it has not. She and Timmy are innocent. It has nothing to do with them. It's more about how it's constructed. Blah blah blah. But
I
she's
completely
great.
agree with you. Yeah. So here's the question though: is do we see a world where it's? I mean, we this is very possible where it's Zoe, Ariana, Monica Barbaro, Jamie Lee Curtis, and Selena. So like Isabella, Felicity, and Margaret don't even get in at all, and it's the other three.
It's very it's very possible. That's the problem. There's so many. I mean, it's the same way with I think some of the actress lead actress itself has kind of evened out a little bit, but like a few weeks ago there was like I had like 12 that I was like any of these could get in, and if they got in they could win. But yeah, the five that you just said, I that would I would not love that, but that would be that's possible. I just
There's so
don't
many
know.
combinations, and I don't know which five
It's just
because
like in my mind, how many singing folks can they have? You know, like
that's also I didn't think about that because and with Selena, like I've said all along, she seems like the person that shows up all award season and doesn't make it in
yeah.
on Academy. Like I've compared her to like the J Lo and Jennifer Aniston type of a
Hmm.
person, which I do think she fits. But the problem is Amelia Perez is such a big movie
No,
where
yeah,
like
they did not have a vehicle like Amelia Perez
yeah,
to shepherd them into a nomination. That's for sure.
which like I understand there being biases against Selena, which is why I was not predicting her. But if her movie is gonna be again the nomination leader of the morning and a potential threat for picture at this point to win, by the way, not even to get nominated. So does she come along? And if I disagree, I think Zoe is firmly out front at this point to win, especially
Hmm.
after her Globe speech. So if she is like as beloved, then does she just take her co-star along for the ride?
Yeah, that totally makes sense. If people are thinking that she is more the runner at this point, then yeah, I mean, I could easily see them be like, and she was great with Selena too. Like, let's
Yeah.
go. Amelia Perez, all the checks.
And then we come the reason why I feel, better about Isabella Rossellini, but she could easily miss. But if Conclave is as big of a thing, like we've mentioned it in a lot of categories, you know what I mean? So like
Yeah,
then she could just go along, I don't know. Or she could easily miss. But I mean she's so beloved in her own right and an icon in her own right. So like
yeah.
I
I feel stronger about her sticking around than like a Monica Barbaro or even Felicity Jones at this point, mainly because I don't actually think enough people watched her parts in it. I'm
yeah,
convinced that is going to keep her out.
well, that's the thing is I've now convinced myself to take her out. I just don't know who. Like, if I only have, because again, I feel pretty good about Margaret Qualley, even though I may be leading myself down the wrong path, but I feel pretty good about her just because we should also mention she had 2 other movies come out this year.
Yeah,
And she's just somebody who's been working with a lot of people and, like, I think has made a name for herself in this industry outside of, like, nepotism. Um,
totally.
but if we live in a world where we are correct and like Isabella gets in and Margaret gets in and we only have one spot, then that makes it even harder because it's like who of the four people of Selena or Monica or JB, I guess we have three, who would be, or Felicity four, who would be the one person to get?
I think it would be Jamie Lee Curtis because I think that would be personally the least interesting one, and I just feel like that's what they would do. But I don't know.
And we clearly saw with Everything Everywhere All at Once, because, and I will say this, I've said this controversially, I'm going to say it again just for fun. I think she's better in The Last Showgirl than she was in Everything Everywhere All at Once.
100%.
That was my first thing when I saw The Last Showgirl. I was like, wait, this is like a better performance. Why didn't she win the Oscar for this?
Yeah, they should have just waited. But
thinking there's no way, like when I saw it at TIFF in September, I said that being like, well, there's no way. But I never thought that we'd actually be having this conversation. Never in a million years did I think I would be sitting here right now in January. But again, we come to like all the things we mentioned of this season being so unpredictable. And if you love Jamie Lee Curtis, as we know they do, then she's probably the safest person to choose.
That's kind of, I think that's where my thinking is at. Is they're going to be scratching their head with all these other ones. They need to pick the safe Jamie Lee Curtis to round it out.
Let's go to Best Supporting Actor.
Congratulations, Kieran Culkin, on your victory. Everyone else, I have no clue what to do with this, but
I think for a long time I was like, no, there's a path for Guy Pearce. There's a path for Yuri Borisov. At this point, I'm just like, that's another Oscar that we can engrave. Now, in terms of the nominations, I actually feel pretty good about 4 of them. And I have a 5th slot that's wide open. So I have Guy Pearce for The Brutalist.
Mm-hmm.
I think even if you don't make it to the back half of that movie, he makes a strong enough impression in the first half. I think he's somebody that's been around for a really long time, worked with a lot of people. There's a lot of respect for him in the industry, et cetera, et cetera. Yuri Borisov, for a long time in the season, I was like, wouldn't it be cool if he gets in? But I think he's proven to be a big enough contender here. And I think there's enough love for Honora and enough love for what he does. I think, again, we're talking about a lot of like co-star actor pairs this season. If Mikey is a major contender for Best Actress, I think he comes along because so many of their key scenes are paired together. Similar to Monica and Timmy and some of the actress contenders we're going to get to. I think Edward Norton is pretty safe at this point because I think
I do too. I didn't believe it early on, but he's people love him, and he's not like a evil person in this movie. So they're like, yeah, let's give it to he's like nice guy Pete Seeger. Come on.
And playing, again, playing a real person, he has enough of a transformation. He has all the like name checking things of like a traditional Oscar nomination, which in my opinion brings us to 1 open slot and potentially like 4 contenders. I have Jeremy Strong getting in for The Apprentice.
I do too.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe that's good or maybe that's bad. I don't know. I just think people like him. Like, even if you haven't seen the movie, honestly, I don't even think it matters. I think he could be a name check just based on Succession. And I understand. Well, the argument is like you may have even opinions about him as a person that are separate. But I just mean I think people like him as an actor. I think they like what he does as an actor. And I think it's easier. I think the Academy loves like the winking devil villain, and that's very much kind of what he does.
For sure.
So that's why I have him over Clarence Macklin, which kills me. Like, I think if there's any justice, I would love to see Clarence Macklin in, but I just think Jeremy Strong, like the name recognition is strong. And heck, the film might even be stronger at this point. Like, if I'm right about The Apprentice getting in for hair and makeup, like,
yeah, could be huge.
But do you think that like Denzel, well, obviously you don't because you agree with me and you have Jeremy Strong, but do you think that we're overlooking like the name recognition of a Denzel Washington or a Stanley Tucci? Like,
I think at this point, well, both Conclave definitely has more strong support that we are sure about actually exists. And Gladiator 2 is one of those that we don't know where it's going to land on a lot of things. But if, let's say, all the things that we've talked about Gladiator 2 below the line getting, if it gets even just a few of those, then it's super easy to see. They're like, oh yeah, we liked Gladiator 2 enough to get these, or to give it these nominations and vote for it. Why not throw Denzel in there as well? I mean, one of the most recognizable names of all time. Like I just, that if they get more into like checking boxes of things that they are comfortable with and that they know, I could
Roman
easily see that.
J. Israel Esquire. Like
I mean,
whenever they
yeah,
have an empty slot, it's easy for them. And this is why you've actually talked me into Jamie Lee Curtis. Lord help us. Because whenever there's an empty slot, they name check the people that they know. We've seen it time and time again. Like when they don't know where to go, they go to who they know. And I think that if you're in a position where you haven't seen like you don't care about the brutalist, whatever, maybe he gets in over a Guy Pearce.
that would be tragic for me personally, but that's I could see it. I do
I
think
agree with you.
between
Yeah.
Denzel and Stanley Tucci, I think Denzel's performance is flashier, and people have said this. I've said it before. I think that Tucci needed one more like scene where he kind of gets a little angry or yells or something. He only has the one where he really gets like animated, and the rest of it he's good, but it's not like, I don't know. Supporting actor is typically they like the flashier parts in a lot of this.
Mm-hmm.
See Kieran Culkin, your winner, probably.
Yeah.
But yeah. I mean, this is another one where I feel good at least about the three. I feel decently okay about, or I guess four. But yeah, I feel okay about Jeremy Strong. But I totally wouldn't be surprised if Sing Sing does better than we are expecting, and it does what we hope, then I think Clarence could get in easily. But I just don't. It's another one where like I don't know who's seen it, so it's hard to say how much support there will actually be.
Well, that's the other thing. Speaking of like acting pairs, is like if is Coleman, because I'm assuming you have him in your 5.
Oh yeah.
Spoiler alert. Okay, so if he's strong enough to get in, is he getting in just because he's Coleman Domingo and they like him? Like, are we making the argument that that's why he's in and not because they've seen it? Because I don't understand
Yes.
a world where if you've watched that film, you don't nominate Clarence Macklin.
I know. I watched it in July and I skyrocketed him to my number 1 in supporting actor, and then I've just been disappointed day after day since then.
Because his character, by the way, is like the point of the movie, is like the redemptive power of the arts, which he shows. So if you've watched the movie, I just don't see a world where he doesn't get out. But by the way, I said that about Barbie last year. I was like, how is it possible to watch Barbie and not nominate the Barbie? And look what happened.
Yeah, yeah. The Academy likes the flashier things and not the point of the movie. They miss the point a lot of times, for sure.
Which Clarence Macklin should be winning this category in a
He
walk.
should be. No disrespect to Kieran Culkin, but yes, I agree with you.
I mean, I could make an argument with, and basically, and I like Kieran Culkin a lot, but I think just performance-wise, there's a lot of stronger performances, but I don't think that matters. But let's go to a category where I think actually the strongest performance of the year may actually win. Best Actress. I'll let you go. Give me your list. Yeah.
I've got Demi Moore, Mikey Madison, Carla Sofia Gascon, Cynthia Erivo, and then I have Fernanda Torres in as my number 5.
That's the 5 that I have as well.
Let's go.
And to be honest with you, I know people like there's arguments to be made for a lot of these other contenders. But I actually feel pretty good about this category just because I feel like, as we've mentioned, the substance is very much happening. And I think to me, speaking of the Golden Globes, like if there was ever a doubt about her, I think the Golden Globes shut it down.
100%.
I think Honora is strong enough. I think Mikey is strong enough. Again, they love an ingenue. not Angelou Ellis Taylor. Good Lord. I think Wicked is a big enough storm for Cynthia Erivo. Even if it wasn't, I still would feel pretty good about. I know people are making arguments for why she could miss. I see that, but I don't. I think the Defying Gravity moment, and I just think people have seen it. And same thing for Carla Sofia. Like I've seen a lot of people saying, "Oh, she's the Amelia Perez actress that can miss," but she's I don't see it. I think that movie is a big enough storm. And then I think that Golden Globe speech for Fernanda Torres, I think was enough to get her through.
Yeah, we needed to see her win there because I knew that there's support somewhere for the movie. Like it was huge in Brazil, and so I needed to see a win where I actually got to see the speech, and she capitalized big time.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I do feel. I look at the list of my 6 through 10, and I'm like more like 6 through 8. I've got Angelina Jolie, Nicole Kidman, and Marianne Jean-Baptiste, and I could see any of them getting in too, but I think Maria is waning. Baby Girl, I don't know what to make of that. That would be a lone nomination for sure. And then Hard Truths is another one. I mean, Marianne Jean-Baptiste early on in the season was like crushing everything. And
Yeah.
yeah,
But I
know.
don't think like I understand that stats wise, because she's won so many of the top critics prizes, and they're like, well, normally if you win XYZ, that it translates to an Oscar nomination. But I don't think that is going to carry through here, unfortunately.
So yeah, I agree. I think that yeah, I feel decent about the. I mean, Cynthia Erivo, I honestly think is probably the most vulnerable, at least and maybe Carla, but no, I mean, I just don't see them leaving them out at this point.
But I guess if there is a surprise, who do you think is the most likely to get? Like, do you think the Pamela Anderson? Because a lot of people are predicting her.
Yeah, I haven't given that a ton of serious thought, to be honest with you, but it does make sense. I just feel like all the love for that movie is going towards Jamie Lee Curtis, and I think that Pamela would be left out. But I mean, they could both get in, and like you said, they like to have the pairs instead of lone nominations, so they can all come along together.
I actually disagree with you. I think if there's somebody who's going to be that we're overlooking, it is Nicole Kidman, because I just think people really like that. They like her. So similar to my like Denzel argument of like they don't know where to go, they go to somebody they know. I think they could just name check her. Like if you haven't seen I'm Still Here,
right. That makes sense.
I think she could be the one. I would, and I just have to bring this up because she is picking up nominations places, but like Kate Winslet for Lee would be so funny.
I have some friends who have been like strong on the campaign trail, not even because they like are super passionate about that movie, but I think someone who's like running her campaign, I can't remember the person's name, but like they always do pretty well for some reason. Yeah. But there's
Winslet has been out there.
She is running. I don't know where to at this point, but I don't see it for her, unfortunately.
We have to bring it up as a possibility because I do think there's a world, but I feel pretty good about Fernanda Torres at this again because I think the international contingent is going to come into play here.
I agree. Yeah, that's where at this point anything Amelia Perez it's so strong broadly that doesn't even obviously it's going to win international feature like 99.99%, but I don't even view that as like the stand-in like international contingent at this point. Like I feel like everybody's supporting it, and so I think I'm Still Here is probably where the international body gets their say.
Which brings us to another category where I feel pretty good about 4, and I have one slot that is giving me a headache, which is Best Actor. Yep. So I think, and I think you would agree, I think Timothée Chalamet, Adrian Brody, Ray Fiennes, and Coleman Domingo We feel pretty good about those 4. Do you also have those 4?
I do still have. I'm with you. You mentioned it earlier, but I do have Timmy as my number 1 right now.
Mm-hmm. Now, for the longest time, I've had Daniel Craig, and I've kept in Daniel Craig because my argument has been that he is an actor that, did his indie films, then did his big James Bond thing, came back, does an indie, is a biopic, and I felt very strongly about that. And my argument was that Sebastian Stan was splitting his own vote between The Apprentice and A Different Man. And I felt like that was going to be enough to knock him out of contention. Then BAFTA happened, and I was correct about the votes. Or wait, did Sebastian Stan he got in at BAFTA, didn't he, for A Different Man?
I thought so.
Let me double. I think he did. But the big surprise at BAFTA was no Daniel Craig, which if Daniel Craig would have been safe anywhere with 6 slots, should we mention, it would have been BAFTA.
Yeah, Sebastian Stan did get in.
Yeah. Okay, so then we see Hugh Grant get in for Heretic. So am I overlooking how strong Sebastian is just for The Apprentice? Like, do we not think vote split could be a factor here? Because we should mention at SAG, we saw Jeremy Strong get in, but no Sebastian Stan. So I was correct there that he potentially split his vote.
Yeah, I think an awards body that has more American voters in it is more likely to, if they like The Apprentice, I think it's more likely that Jeremy Strong gets in and Sebastian does not than the other way around.
Yeah,
and I think,
no,
I've been talking about this the whole season. Daniel Craig has kind of been my stand-in for number 5 spot because no one else seems to want to take up the mantle, and I still feel that way. So I still have Daniel Craig at 5. But I mean, Sebastian Stan, I think at this point is really the only other option. Do you have anyone else in mind?
I did tweet about this. I was like, wouldn't it be funny if it's not Daniel Craig or Sebastian Stan and Hugh Grant gets his first Oscar nomination for Heretic?
Yeah, I would
don't
love
think
that.
that's
That'd be
gonna I
hilarious,
don't
but
think that's gonna happen. But
no, I don't
I do
either.
think, it's between Sebastian Stan and Daniel Craig. The question becomes, does A Different Man pull enough votes to knock him down or not?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it depends on if people are like, we need to. I mean, do you see a world where he would get in for A Different Man instead of The Apprentice? Like they put their support behind. I
No,
don't think that world exists.
I don't think so. I think The Apprentice is the stronger performance. I just think he may be pulling enough votes away from A Different Man, like for A Different Man, to where it's enough to knock him down, especially because of my earlier argument where like it doesn't take that many votes to get in the first place this year.
Totally.
And like that's where Daniel Craig benefits, because if Sebastian is splitting, Daniel Craig could just come through and like maybe American voting. I don't, and I've said this, like to your point, I just think it's easier for international voting bodies to handle The Apprentice than it is American ones.
It totally is. And if they're going to handle it, it's going to be not the guy playing Donald Trump. It's going to be Jeremy Strong.
Exactly.
So I think that he is the representative of us liking this movie. So yeah, I think that to your point, the splitting of votes and the nature of the better performance, The Apprentice, I just think, I think it would take a lot for Daniel Craig to be left out. And there's the whole alphabet situation as well for Daniel Craig. So that how much of that is actually real, we don't know, but that is in our brains, and D and C are pretty high up on the alphabet.
And they really like these sort of like career nominations, right? Like we saw it for Antonio Banderas.
Totally.
So it could just I don't know. I'm telling you, like Daniel Craig missing with BAFTA just really messed with me, because I had this argument and I had stuck with it for so long. But if he doesn't even make it in with his hometown crowd, then And all along, you and I have been talking about, well, the international contingent. Well, if the international contingent doesn't like Queer, that movie
Yeah.
has not done well at all this season. So then are
Yeah.
we just overlooking how strong Daniel Craig is? Like, maybe he's never really been a contender. I don't know.
Yeah, it's more of my lack of confidence in anything else happening than my confidence in him sticking it out. I think Sebastian will just split too many votes for him to get in. But I mean, yeah, like you said, it doesn't take that much this year, so that this could be the year to where something
Mhm.
like Sebastian Stan still splits votes with himself and gets in for something that I would expect the Academy to try to not touch with a 10-foot pole. But
And do you think that Sebastian Stan, like the Globe speech, in which he very smartly mentioned The Apprentice, like, would that be enough to?
that helps for sure.
I,
I just don't. It's hard for me to know what American Academy voters are making of the current political climate. It's like
yeah,
it's hard to know what kind of do they want to make a statement by like staying away from it or make a statement by recognizing it. And there's not really
right.
an in
Because
between.
I think a lot of people are saying like they're gonna stay away from it to make a statement, but maybe recognizing it is the statement, right? Like
Right?
that's
Yeah.
also a statement. And I think all along I've had this argument of like Sebastian Stan isn't like Daniel Craig is a stronger presence, which I think is true. Like I think he was very close to getting nominated for the girl with the dragon tattoo and was like
Hmm.
very much probably a stronger contender than we were thinking about for Knives Out. Um, but I think Sebastian Stan is also an actor that's like been doing such strong supporting work for a long time and like was possibly a contender for I Tanya, kind of thing. So like I don't know. I guess we're on the same page where we both don't know, and I'm hoping that you talk me into Sebastian Stan.
I'm sticking with Daniel Craig. I just it's not too late for me to switch, but I think I'm just gonna I've had him there the whole time. I just don't I haven't seen enough to convince me otherwise, I think.
Okay. Well, I think actually director is a category that feels a bit safer, but give
Mhm.
me your 5 and we'll see, or your long list if you would like to. But I'm curious who your 5 are.
Yeah, so I'll start with 5. I've got Brady Corbett. Congrats on your victory. Well, maybe the AI stuff. Who knows? Sean Baker, Honora. I've got Amelia Perez, Jacques Audiard, Edward Berger, Conclave, and Corley Farja for The Substance. And then I just put this in today. I've got James Mangold creeping up at number 6 because A Complete Unknown just
Mm,
keeps surging and pushes my beloved Ramel Ross to 7.
yeah. I actually, and I have the same 5. I think Coralie is happening for The Substance.
I do too.
Her not getting the DGA does not concern me.
Yeah,
It makes sense that they nominated Mangold at DGA. Actually, I just think she has all the making, like the international auteur spot that I thought was going to be the Muhammad Rasulov spot. It makes sense that she fills that void this year.
totally. Yeah.
I think if there's a spoiler, it's going to be maybe John M. Chu for Wicked, maybe.
Yeah.
But I feel good about those 5. Shall we move on to our last category? Are we ready to wrap up this thing with a bow
Let's do
or
it.
an argument? We shall see. Okay, so and I think we're gonna have different lists here. Surprisingly, for picture, I have Conclave, Honora, Amelia Perez, Wicked, The Brutalist, The Substance, A Complete Unknown, Dune Part 2, Sing Sing, and A Real Pain.
I think I've got 9 of those 10. And I am debating between the only one I don't have is Sing Sing. I took it out,
Mm.
which I don't love, but I have Nickel Boys in. But it's one of those where I also have my 10, 11, 12 is Nickel Boys, Sing Sing, and your beloved September 5,
Mm.
which I even though I've put it in a couple things today, I don't think it's actually. I think it's more between Nickel Boys and Sing Sing. And there is a chance that All We Imagine Is Light, like we've talked about, could sneak in at 10 here, but I don't know if we live in that world. But it does seem like Nickel Boys and Sing Sing are kind of fighting for one final spot. What do you think?
Yeah. No, I agree with you. And I had actually I had taken out A Real Pain for a while, and then when it did well with it got that PGA nomination.
Yeah,
And I just think like it makes sense if Karen Culkin is riding the train all the way, like you can't. I just don't see how A Real Pain is going to miss. So like the supporting actor, screenplay, package, and picture makes sense to me.
totally.
And for a long time, that's what I thought that's what the pathway that I had imagined for Sing Sing. But I don't know why I put in Sing Sing over Nickel Boys. I think it's because of the Coleman Domingo of it all. I think if he's definitely in, I think it makes sense that his movie would be in as well. Whereas Nickel Boys seems like it doesn't really, other than screenplay, there's no like above the line support
Yeah.
for that film seemingly. My question is like, what if Dune Part 2?
It could miss.
So what if Dune Part 2 misses and then Sing Sing and Nickel Boys get in?
I
Or
would be sad, but that would be cool. It would be like sad because I love Dune, but amazing because I love both Sing Sing and Nickel Boys, and I think that those are more important to get a showcase probably. But yeah, I mean, it would make sense though because we've talked about Dune's waning support, and it's going to get way less below the line this year than it did for Part 1. It could. People might have just forgotten about it at this point. It could very easily not be in.
and so you have Sing Sing over. I mean, you have Nickel Boys over Sing Sing, and then you
I
have
actually
everything
just
else.
switched it back, so
Oh,
now I
okay.
have Sing Sing in there.
Well,
But no, your point about the best actor and screenplay and picture, that makes a lot more sense than Nickel Boys potential screenplay and picture with no acting. I think that makes more sense to me.
but okay, so if September 5, like if we're gonna make room for something, so what September 5 knocks out Sing Sing? Is there a world where I guess I'm trying to figure out a world where I can keep Sing Sing in here? Like, is there a world where Sing Sing gets in, something else misses, and then September 5 gets in?
I mean, I think Dune is vulnerable if we just talked about. I think Real
Yeah.
Pain is also vulnerable. I still feel good about it, but I think it's in the bottom 3 of
Right.
people
Yeah.
for I don't know if that's going to be one that people are like super duper passionate about it, like putting, especially with the ranked choice situation, like putting it high up. But yeah, I don't know. I think Sing Sing is the most vulnerable, sadly, of
Oh,
these
for
of these
sure. For
10,
sure.
which is a real bummer. But
Is there something else that we could be, because I wonder like in a world, if there is a world where like let's say something crazy happens in like September 5 and All We Imagine Is Light or something gets in, is there something else that maybe is like vulnerable that we're overlooking? Because it doesn't seem like it to me. It seems like we have like a solid 8 or 9, but are we overlooking something here?
no, I mean, yeah, the only thing that I can think would maybe be,
Like if we're in for a surprise, what would it be?
I'm just looking at my 6 through 10. I mean, Wicked is right there. Maybe we're overestimating its support. I don't think we are. I think it's pretty solid. Dune is kind of the one that I think could sneak its way out. I still have it at
Yeah.
6, but it does, with what we've talked about today. I could see a path where it performs even worse than we're predicting, and it's got some technical awards, and that's kind of it.
Yeah. I think I don't think this is missing picture, but I think a film that's overall more vulnerable, and I say this because I have it ranked at number 2 right now, is Nora.
Yeah,
Like
I've
I
got
think
it at
there's
5.
yeah,
It's been dropping in my
it's
estimation
been
by the
it's
day.
been it's been dropping. I don't think it's gonna miss, but I think I think I had it in like editing or something. Like I think a lot of
Mhm.
I don't know where the below the line support for that movie is gonna come from. Like I think it may just be like maybe Sean Baker misses in director, honestly.
Yeah, I totally would not be surprised. I had him as my front runner until The Brutalist existed for a while, but yeah, I don't know. I just the a lot of these seem so solid, but maybe there's some through lines that we're just not seeing that
Yeah.
make them more vulnerable than we think.
And I do just want to say, like, as we close out, that, part of the whole point of like expanding the Academy and expanding to 10 Best Picture nominees was that we could get, more of these like smaller films come through, and which we've seen with The Substance, and that's great. It really bothers me that the two films that are on the cusp for most of these categories that we're talking about are movies that are deal with like people of color, and
Mhm.
I just think like the fact that this is still continuously an issue, like yes, the Academy is becoming international, but like it's clearly not uh really centering like these stories of people of color, and I find that really frustrating this season. And I think it was the Oscar expert who made this point of like when the Best Picture nomination happens, like a lot of these films, that's like their way to be seen. And so,
Yeah.
like, how beautiful would it be, like, if Nickel Boys and Sing Sing both get in, and then people actually like watch these films, and like the whole point of the expansion was to advocate for movies like Nickel Boys and Sing Sing. So the fact that they're not, again, I'm happy that the Substance train is like fully happening, and that's clearly benefited. But like I don't feel good about those two films being the two films that are on the
Yeah,
cusp.
it is really frustrating, and it's sad that they have so many similarities. It's not like two completely different uh movies that like have nothing in common. There's like there's a pattern that is
Mhm.
unfortunately forming in a lot of these
Yeah.
categories, and year over year it seems like that continues to happen.
Yep. Yep. There's a bias that I think I don't know what it's gonna take, but I think it's still there, unfortunately. Cameron, do you have any closing thoughts or films that we didn't touch on, or categories that you think, maybe we need to dig into a little further here?
I think we've done about as much excavating as we can. I mean, without talking about things that don't really have a shot. I just want to shout out that if Hitman were to ever get anything, that would be really cool for me personally. But I don't. I that world doesn't exist. I don't think.
Yeah, an adapted screenplay nomination for Hitman would be really cool because you would get Linklater and Glenn Powell uh, along for the ride there. A movie I think from earlier this year that deserved better for sure. Yeah, I think we've got it all covered. I'll be really curious to see on the 23rd. I mentioned the nomination that I'm rooting the most for is Clarence Macklin.
Hmm.
What nomination would be the nomination that just knocks your socks off and would make you really? What name are you hoping to hear most?
I think. I honestly think that if I could have one, I would want Ramel Ross in
Mm.
director. I rewatched Nickel Boys the other day, and it blew me away all over again. And I got to see his documentary, Hale County, this evening, a few days ago as well. And he is literally a teacher who happens to have directed two movies, and that is fascinating to me about how thoughtful his movies are. And I just, if there's one that could, other than Clarence Macklin, because that would also probably be like my 1A, 1B. But if there was someone that could like get a voice and an opportunity to say some stuff at the Oscars, I would want to hear from Ramel Ross.
Mhm. I completely agree. We will be back to do a post-mortem, post-nomination, see how wrong we were. Hopefully, I think I think we did okay. I know we both were saying that we don't feel as confident, but I think overall we did okay.
Yeah, it's a weird year.
It's a weird year. It's a weird year. We're giving ourselves grace. We're holding space for for unpredictability and giving ourselves grace. So we will check back in. Cameron, tell people where they can find you, because you are an awesome presence online, and you do a lot of great work, not just for In Session Film. So I want to make sure you get in a solid plug here.
Yeah, thank you. You can find my work at Geek Vibes Nation, as well as In Session Film and The Rolling Tape. I do more podcasting type stuff at The Rolling Tape and less writing, but you can also find me on all social media platforms at Cameron Ritter 35 and on Letterboxd at Cameron 35.
I am at Shadan Larkey everywhere, and I do want to say I have a cold, so I'm sorry I sound nasally, and I also just moved. So hopefully next time we do this, I look like I'm in, I don't know, the middle of nowhere or something with my white wall behind me, but hopefully that'll be different the next time we do this. But yes, thank you so much, everyone that's been following along all season. As I mentioned, my Oscar nominations will be, they're fully updated now, potentially updated. We'll see in the next couple of days. They are on InSessionFilm.com. The whole Chasing the Gold team, including Cameron, has been doing some really great work kind of breaking down all these categories. I highly encourage you to check it out. We have a lot of interviews with these contenders that we have been talking about. So just head to the website. You will find a lot of great content there from a lot of the most talented writers in the game, including Cameron. So thank you, Cameron, so much for being here, for giving me 2 hours of your evening. I really, really appreciate it. And thank you, everyone, for listening.
Yeah, thanks. We got it done before I had to cook dinner. That's amazing.
We got it done. We will see you guys in a couple days.